Today's show is brought to you by
8 and Sand Beer Company, Woodbury, New Jersey, and the Brass Tap, Vineland, New Jersey. I'm Kendra. Here's our host. A man who is as subtle as a brick, and whose knowledge is as deep as a shot glass. Gary Monterosso.
Hey everyone, welcome to What's on Tap, and so honored to and so excited about having new breweries join the southern part of the state. It's so cool for us. I was yesterday at Bonesaw Brewing, and I was visiting with a friend from California, Herlinda Harras, who is a radio show host, and it's a person who simply got tired of dealing with the fires in the Santa Rosa area, so she ended up flying here. But she was, we were talking about the influx of breweries in the southern part of the state. I'm gonna call the southern part of the state from Trenton south. You may disagree with me, and that's fine, but I can go back to the days of the 1980s in which the only thing we had here in the southern part of the state were Flying Fish, which at the time was located in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and the Tun Tavern, which still exists as part of a brew pub in Atlantic City. Well, now things have taken off. We have some remarkable breweries coming to our part of the state, and we have a new brewery, very new as a matter of fact. I want to ask this young man about, of course, he couldn't predict COVID-19 and the impact that had on him, but let's introduce Captain Jack and your brewery is called?
Dr. Brewlittle's over in Maple Shade, New Jersey.
Which is a great name, Dr. Brewlittle's in Maple Shade, New Jersey. Now, I have to ask you this. Now, you guys have only been open for a few months at this point, right?
So we just finished our 5th weekend, actually, because we opened up on Labor Day weekend.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you opened up Labor Day weekend. It has been probably years in the planning, Jack?
Just about like a year. I mean, we moved fairly quickly, all things considered. We had a really good team behind everything. So it's been about a year and a half of the planning or so.
Okay. So we go back a year and a half. Everything was all fine and dandy. And then all of a sudden, come February, March, COVID kicks in.
That it did.
And, you kind of change things on the fly. You had to go from, primarily indoor sales and marketing to, for the most part, an outdoor environment. How has this impacted on you? It's a question I ask all brewers, but especially being brand new, Jack, what effect has this had on you?
So for us, I would honestly say it didn't have as much as for a lot of people that were already open, because I didn't have to change plans. I mean, we pretty much opened up in the current climate, so we could adapt pretty quickly to everything.
Mm-hmm.
We opened up with 25% capacity indoors, and we had the benches set up for outside. Like, we knew what was coming. I didn't expect to, we were supposed to be open in March, and COVID definitely slowed things down with the state only working like 1 day a week, and paperwork took longer and communications took longer because they were like on furlough time, so they couldn't talk, and that was the hardest thing. But when we kind of figured out like what it was going to be, like, we just said, all right, this is what it is. We're going to have this capacity. This is how we're going to have to use our business plan going forward. And so for us, it actually wasn't too bad. It does suck that I can't have, as many people around, but for the most part, I mean, we kind of just knew what was coming. So we didn't have to like change anything. We just opened up as it was.
I can almost turn that around and make a positive out of this. You're opening up in the worst of times. It can only get better, I would think.
Yeah, that's kind of in the back of my mind. I mean, originally when we were supposed to be open in March around St. Patty's Day, what I ran into was, just this thing hit like a few weeks before, like we were like, okay, like we got all of our paperwork set up and all that stuff. And then before I knew it, it was Labor Day weekend. But I didn't have to go through the struggles of like seeing how we did business and then seeing how we did business during COVID. Like that, to me, like not being able to see those figures, because I can't imagine that they're really good figures, it was kind of nice for us. I mean, it sucks for a lot of people that had to go through that. But just from a personal standpoint and, no outliers, it just, I don't know. It wasn't too bad for us. We just knew what we were going to get. We knew what was happening. And so basically the only thing that can hopefully happen from here is it gets better.
Tell me about the structure of the building. Where exactly are you located within the Maple Shade community?
So we're at 108 East Main Street in Maple Shade. We're right in the heart of Main Street. We're next to Maritza's Cafe, which has been here for years and years and years, and Shine Yoga. We're on the same block as the old Charlie Brown's that's been out here.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah, so that was actually almost our first original building. We were looking at buying that.
Interesting.
It needs some work, so thankfully there's another business that bought that, so there should be like a sushi place or something coming soon.
Cool. Tell me about your history in brewing. Tell me about your background.
It's honestly not a lot. A lot of this stuff is kind of first time for me, so I've done homebrew and stuff like that. That was really all I ever had practice with. And when I was in New York, where I originally lived in Long Island. I worked in a beverage distributor, and that was fine. But when this idea came across my table, I had really no experience with anything, which is why when my partner Chris, who owns a couple animal hospitals, Mount Laurel and Pennsauken out here, when he asked, "Do you want to do the brewing, or should we find someone?" I said, "We find someone. I want a professional to do the brewing because I can learn the business, I can learn the law, and I can think of some recipes, but I want someone who's worked on that system for a few years before touching ours." So we just went with a more professional brewer, which is Josh. He's worked at Duck Rabbit was his first brewery out in North Carolina. And then he went to St. Benjamin's. He was their head brewer for a while before they closed and became a robot. Yeah. And then he worked at Mainstay. And then I was fortunate enough to scoop him up and have him making all of our beers.
Good background. We had St. Benjamin's on the show going back a couple of years ago, as a matter of fact. So sorry they're not part of the community any longer, but I'm happy for you that you're able to pick.
That's kind of how I see it. I mean, it sucks, and I feel bad for them because they made Josh made really good beer over there, and they were
absolutely.
They were on their way to being something pretty cool, and it sucked to see them get their lights cut out from under them. But I'm kind of happy that I got Josh.
So you did some home brewing. Then I'm going to talk about some of your recipes. Then the creation of the beers that you have out right now, because I'm looking at your tap list. I believe that's current.
Yep, the one on our website should be current.
Okay, is that a conglomeration of ideas? How do you decide what you guys are going to release? I know, by the way, you're drinking a remarkable Oktoberfest right now too. Let's take a look at that. Look at the colors. I mean, that's beautiful.
You're just looking at my hands.
That's a beautiful fall beer right there.
It is. It's delicious.
Okay, how's that? Is that moving pretty well for you?
It's one of our quickest selling beers, honestly. That and the hazy that we do are our top two beers right now. So, recipe-wise, I mean, me and Josh will kind of put our heads together and say, hey, what do we want to brew coming up? And we'll just kind of throw ideas at each other. And, Chris, our partner, will say hey, what about this? For the most part, me and Josh decide what brews are going on. Chris's last name, which actually did pretty good to his credit, was his brother owns an oyster farm out in Rhode Island. And so he brought 24 fresh oysters to us. So we did an oyster stout.
I was just going to say, oyster stout sounds perfect.
Yeah, we did a 9-gallon batch of it because I don't know if I could do a 5-barrel batch of it. Because we only have a 5-barrel system. So 10 kegs is a lot, but 1 keg's not too bad.
Well, you actually answered my next question. I was going to ask you what type system you have, the size of the system. You really just
So we have a 5-barrel Portland Kettleworks system with 4 fermenters and a bright tank. I already am pricing out moving our fridge because we have cold storage outside in our fridge. Or outside in our brewery, because we're technically 2 separate buildings, which is the first in Jersey. It was fun to set a New Jersey regulation. That was always a lot of fun to go through. But we have we're going to try to get in a 10-barrel bright tank and a 10-barrel fermenter in the next few months, so I can start, double batching what we call our Lights On series, which are the 3 or 4 beers that'll probably be on tap for the most part.
Beautiful.
And then everything else is just on rotation, so I don't mind doing a 5-barrel batch of it.
So how many beers could we find on tap at any particular time?
The most I can host is 16. So I have 16 taps here.
That's great, though. That's fantastic.
Yeah, right now, because of how quickly people are drinking things, I kick 1 or 2 things a week, pretty much. So generally, I have between 5 and 8 if you catch me at the end of a session or right after we brewed something. Grogs, for instance, like I said, is one of our quickest movers. So we kegged that last Thursday, and I had about either 8 3/4 or 9.5 kegs of it. And I'm down to 1/6 still in the fridge and the 2 I have on tap.
What do you like to drink? Is there a a benchmark? Is there a beer that you particularly enjoy drinking, or style, I should say?
So I have the classic answer of I'll drink anything. I mean, I really will drink anything. I don't care what it is. My favorite style is probably a hazy IPA right now, just a not lactose, just a regular standard hazy IPA. So the Grog's Paradise is actually named after my cat, so I'm a little bit biased. But other than that, I like a good Pilsner too, and thankfully Josh does a really nice Czech Pilsner and American Pilsner that we had on tap that went very quickly. But I mean, I'm A to Z, man. You give me a beer and I'll drink it. Even if I don't like it, I'm not leaving the beer in the glass. I'll pretty much drink whatever.
So let's go to your audience, the people who are coming in to visit you. I know the Oktoberfest, which obviously is a seasonal and probably just came out a few weeks ago, I would imagine.
Yeah.
What are people really asking for? What are they drinking? What styles are they drinking? Obviously, the IPAs are going to be hot. They're going to stay hot.
Yeah. So my big thing is variation. I don't like having too many of one type on tap at once. So if one thing's low, back that up. So I technically only have 2 IPAs. I mean, you can call a DIPA an IPA too, but it doesn't really drink like one. But we have a hoppy session in the Grog's Paradise, and I'll probably only ever have on 2 or 3 IPAs at a time because I like a lot of variation. You see a lot in this I guess town that it's a lot of lagers and pilsners and stuff like that. We're a pretty blue collar town. But you do get people who come in who look for IPAs, and we just started doing our flights again. But Oktoberfest and Grogs was the two most requested that we ever had. So we're already, we put another batch in already because I'm down low on that. And so those are probably our most requested, just because it's like a seasonal beer and people seem to like it. I get a lot of requests for pumpkin stuff, which I'm not thrilled about.
No, tell me why.
I'm not a huge fan of pumpkin beers. It's like my feelings on lactose in beers. I just feel like it's like a easy way to sell beer. Like you can put lactose in an IPA or pumpkin in a beer and someone's going to end up drinking it, whether it's good or bad.
Pumpkin beers, you know this, Jack, are so controversial. Well, of course, they start coming out around, July or August, for goodness
sakes.
I know,
it's really weird. I mean, technically, we saw Oktoberfest before we even opened coming out in August, and I was like, it's not ready.
Absolutely.
Like September, we opened with one just because it was September and it felt like the fall. And I'll take it off probably around like a week or so before Thanksgiving, just because we'll replace it with like a lager, and that's about like the season of me is those 2 months. But we are, I will say that we are satisfying the pumpkin need of, we do what's called experimental series. So for instance, we have an export stout that we're brewing right now where in the beginning we took one keg off and I instead used Hefeweizen yeast. So it's going to be a banana bread stout. And then we took 3 other kegs off and we're conditioning one on coffee, one on chocolate, and one on pumpkin and like pumpkin spice and stuff like that. So you'll get 1 keg of pumpkin beer and then no one can ask me for it ever again.
Now that is very cool. I like that concept. As a matter of fact, if I want to backtrack a little bit to something you said, because I noticed that as I'm looking at your lineup of beers, there is quite a cross section. So you're bound to satisfy everyone's palate, I think.
Well, that's a big thing for me is I think craft beer should be very inclusive to all. I don't think it needs to be this like crazy exclusive club where, I mean, we brew a seltzer. And that sells, honestly, I should say the seltzer sells the quickest. I went through 2 kegs in a single day. And because I have to keep my beer production up, we're actually fermenting them in our yeast sprinks. So I can only make 2 or 3 kegs at a time. They usually sell in a day or 2. But I think that you should be able to drink whatever you want. I think that there should be a good stepping stone for people. I mean, I get people who come in who, haven't ever tried craft beer. And I feel like in a lot of other places, what they'll get, and I don't think it's so much in Jersey. I think Jersey's really good about what I call the stepping stones. People will come in and they'll be like, oh, I drink Miller Lite and Bud Light. And they're like, oh, well, here's our best seller, this 9%, IPA. Like, why don't you try this? And the person's not going to like it because you're giving them saying like, all right, try this regular pepper. And okay, here, try this ghost pepper. Like, of course they're not going to like it.
Absolutely.
So we try to have what I like to call stepping stones. So we make an American Pilsner, Doc's Orders, which is named after our brewer's cat. And it's just nice, clean, light Pilsner with Cascade hops all the way through. And people come in, they're like, I drink Miller Lite and Bud Light. I'm like, that's not a problem. Here, try this. And they're like, oh, this is a better version of it. So I try to give people like a way to work their way up. Okay, you like the Pilsner, try the Oktoberfest. You like that? Why don't you try, it's like session IPA. And then you can move to maybe a hazy IPA, then a stout, and then an Imperial. Like, you got to work your way up. I mean, my dad was a Michelob Ultra drinker and Coors Light drinker for years, and now he drinks craft beer all the time.
Jack, I totally subscribe to what you've said. We've mentioned this on What's on Tap so many times, but it's a transition. You don't go from Coors Light to a barley wine, for example. Yeah. And we've just mentioned this. You can turn a person off so quickly. You could lose a potential longtime customer by not quizzing him or her and asking, what do you normally drink if you're not a craft beer drinker? And then you can work their way to that level. What was the term you used for it? Stepping stone, did you say?
Yeah, so you got to work your way up.
Like
you're not, jumping over 5 steps at a time. You got to take one at a time. That's all there is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, that does present a bit of an issue because you can't do flights right now, correct?
So we can do flights. So
you can do flights.
So I have 25% capacity indoors, and I can do flights, but we only serve our flights indoors. So I only, I don't bring them outside. There's no glassware outside and stuff like that.
Well, of course.
Yeah. And so it's a nice way for people to try a few different things. I mean, those were pretty highly requested. We did actually glassware inside on our first day. And I immediately went out the next day and bought PET cups. Cause I was like, there's no way. Absolutely not. It was
smart move. Very, very smart move.
Yeah, it was a lot. But yeah, so I brought flights back and we do those indoors only. And it's kind of a bummer because we fill up, Fridays and Saturdays fill up pretty quickly. And I have people that want to try flights, but they can't sit inside. And it's, there are some downsides to everything now. I mean, you just kind of have to adapt to what's going on. But yeah, so we brought flights back. And I think with the amount of variation I have on the list, I think it's nice. So what I'll do too with the experimental series is I have 4, different beers. And so we'll throw all 4 of the different ones in a flight glass and you can try that kind of thing.
In terms of outdoor seating, how many people can you comfortably seat outdoors?
50 to 60. So we have 10
That's
picnic
a good number.
tables. Yeah, we
Very
got
good.
really, the township of Maple Shade, I've been very fortunate. They are absolutely on board with us. Like they're 100% backing us, like whatever we need. They've been a phenomenal township to work with. And I recommend that any business that wants to come to a good town, you come to Maple Shade because it's
quite an endorsement.
nice.
Jack,
yeah,
You're a young guy, Jack, but I can go back again, 20, 30 years in which breweries were not necessarily welcome within communities because they thought it brought a bad element. That is 100% the opposite. And I think people have found that out. You guys are good. You bring people into town, they're going to spend some money, and you guys are good neighbors. I'm more comfortable, quite frankly, going to a brewery or brew pub than I am a bar.
Oh, absolutely. Cases. I mean, don't get me wrong. I find myself after my shifts here at a bar.
Same here. And I will go to bars. I love going to breweries.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think, to me, there's no really bad person at a brewery. I've never really had a time that, I mean, we've only been open for 5 weeks, so I'm sure I'm going to get one. I think it's just a different atmosphere. I mean, it's more relaxed. It's, you're taking like liquor out of the aspect, and we don't serve any food. So it's just beer and people hanging out and meeting other people and having a good time. I mean, it's a little bit further apart now because you're at 6 feet and I lost my bar seats. But people hanging out, having a good time. I'll see people who will come down and be like, "Oh, I didn't know you were here," and then just sit down, and talk to each other and stuff. It's nice.
Absolutely. That was another thing that I got into with my friend from California. She was so taken aback by the fact that at breweries in New Jersey, you can't serve food. And not only can you not serve food, in some ways you're kind of discouraged from the promotion of food. She could not get over that because in California, it's totally the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of places I always say, like when people ask, "Oh, you can't serve food." I'm like, no, I can't serve food, but there's plenty of places that are within like, a block or two walking distance from me that either deliver, you can go grab food. I don't care if you bring microwave fish and asparagus, like you can bring whatever you want. I just can't give you anything.
Well, that's actually, and that's an advantage for you also, the fact that you are so near places that serve food. So people can in fact eat. And I think it's a good thing.
Maple Shake's not a big town. It's only 3.6 square miles. Like it goes like 4 streets in the other direction and that's it.
There you go.
Like
you talk to people, your customers primarily are local, but are you finding people coming in from other communities to visit you?
I am. I will say that I thought our first 2 months would be a lot of like people trying out the new brewery, and I am getting a lot of that. But I am definitely more so getting people who will come in for their 5th weekend in a row. Next week, their 6th weekend in a row. Like in a weird way, like I know I'm getting backed more by locals right now than people from out of town, which is great for us. I mean, Maple Shade for a while held a Guinness World Record for the most bars per capita, so the town likes to drink, which is also good for me. But I mean, we get people who like have tried a few breweries. I mean, we had like a small brewery tour come in. I reserved a table for them, and they came in. So they, I'd been at like Flying Fish and Eclipse and Double Nickel, out the hops. But we're getting people who are like, "Oh, I found a new brewery," and "Oh, I was driving by and I saw a new brewery," and I like, we have people who are like, "Oh, you're my 75th brewery I've been to. I'm trying to hit them all," and that's like a really cool thing to do. Like I like seeing people like that, but honestly, for the most part, we are already getting a lot of regulars who like, it's like a cool thing to them to brag, like, "This is my 5th weekend here." And I'm like, me too.
That's very cool. That's really good to hear. I want to ask you this question as a brewery owner, and I haven't posed this to too many people, but I don't know if any reviews have been posted online about Dr. Brewlittle's, but if they are, do you read them? Do you take them to heart?
So I'll give you a 2-part. One is for like Google reviews and stuff on Facebook, and one's for Untapped. So in the beginning, when I was driving home, because I run the bar Thursday to Sunday too. So when I would be coming home, I'd be picking up food or something, and I'd call my wife, ask her if she wanted anything, and then she would call me 20 minutes later and be like, "Where are you?" Because it's 5 minutes away from the house. I'm like, "Oh, I stopped in the parking lot because I got caught up reading reviews and answering questions." Because I mean, this is my full-time job. Like this is what I do. So 7 days, like I'm reachable. Like the Instagram, the Facebook. If you call the brewery, it forwards to my cell phone. I've had people call at like 1 a.m. asking if I was open, which I very politely say no and hang up on. I mean, reviews for me are, I feel like that if you don't answer them, like if you just say, "Oh, we're going to do, and that's going to be it," then it's going to grow. Like it's almost like a virus. Like if, one person says a bad thing, then they read that bad thing. And then, 2 other people read that, and it grows and grows and grows. So I try to answer and be like super responsive on Facebook and Instagram. Untapped is a little different for me. Untapped, in my opinion, is a really, really good way to find out what you can change about your beer, but not how good your beer is. Because what I see a lot is like, let's say that we have an IPA and we haven't had it yet. Josh makes great beer, so knock on wood, I'm never going to get it. But you'll get like an IPA, and let's say 90% of people say, "Oh, awesome IPA, but could be a little bit more hoppy." Then you say, "Okay, the beer went over well, but let's add some more hops," and then that changes that beer. Because what I see with ratings though is that people who will be like, "Oh, I don't like a stout, 1 star," and then that'll crush your ratings because you'll get 10 people that'll be like, "Stouts aren't for me," but go out of the way to rate a stout 1 star. So Untapped, I more look for like trends and like what's selling in the area because I have Untapped for business. like what I can maybe change, like the profile wise. But ratings for me are like, in my opinion, we are brewing the best beer we can brew right now. And there are things that we could change, but every day we're brewing the best beer we can brew because we're taking into account all the things that people are saying and, like making the recipes better, not changing any like one thing particularly. But
again, I'm really enjoying what you're saying here, because I've read reviews like you of people saying that they don't like a particular style, which is a condemnation of the beer that you're brewing.
I know.
And I hate to see that. But anyway, you're looking at it as healthy as possible, I think, Jack.
I try to stay positive. Like, I'm a pretty relaxed guy. Like, I try to stay positive about stuff because I don't think if I was relaxed, I don't know if that 6 months probably would have toll on me. But my friends called me retired because I was golfing like 3 days a week while I was waiting for the brewery to finally get open. It was the only thing.
Okay, gotcha. Let's go over the hours right now. What are the hours presently?
So Thursday, we are 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Friday, we're 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Saturday, we are 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. And Sunday, we are 12 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Very good.
When restrictions get a little bit more lifted, and I'm going to wait, even if we get 50% tomorrow, I'm probably going to wait a little bit to see how, the surrounding areas do. I would like to add another day a week. Right now, I'm kind of enjoying having Monday through Wednesday for cleaning the brew house and doing our paperwork and accounting and responding to questions. But we're definitely thinking about adding another day eventually.
Is this all that you thought it would be in terms of the running of a brewery, the workload, et cetera? Is it what you expected?
I think so, because I was doing, so as a director, I was pretty much doing all of the paperwork and all of the build up and, a lot of the stuff. And Chris was a big part of it, financially and helping plan the building. But when it came to the day-to-day stuff, because I left my job in October to do this full time, I kind of knew what to expect in a weird way. And thankfully, my dad's a lawyer, so I was able to sit down and ask some questions about the legality of things. And that's how, we found out I could have 2 buildings that has a fence joining it and a bunch of other stuff. But the first day definitely was a wild ride. I will say that for sure. People came down and it was crazy. I got a lot of support from my friends, which in a weird way made it a lot harder for everyone else because I had, 50, 60 friends show up and try to get beer. Now it's, we're learning every day. I brought plastic in, I took away my flights, and, we have no reservations, no time limits, but we can do call ahead orders and stuff like that. So we're adapting, but it's definitely kind of about what I expected. I think that the outcome of things are better than I expected, especially in the current climate. We're going through beer at in my opinion, an unprecedented rate. We are a new brewery, and I understand that will slow down. But like I said, seeing how many locals come out and seeing how much they drink compared to, out of town people, I don't think that we're going to slow down our beer production anytime soon. I can't have a tank empty for more than 12 hours before I have to fill it again.
Good news. And of course, growlers, you're doing growlers, correct?
Yes, we do growlers and crowlers. I have an October.
And growlers.
Yep. I'm looking to do 12s and 16s eventually, but I can't sacrifice having a mobile cannery come in just yet and eating up 2 fermenters. Maybe when I get my 10 barrels in and I can say, okay, this is a 10 barrel of grogs and I'm not worried about eating up my other fermenters, I'll do that. But we're going to, try to get some kegs out there. I have a solicitor's permit and, we have our transportation permit and everything. So we'll try to get some kegs in the surrounding bars and, get the idea into people's heads. Cause there's people who still go to bars out here that have never heard of us. So, okay, you had my Pilsner on tap. All right, you're in the liquor store, in a couple of days on the weekend, grab beer for a party. Oh, you see a 12-pack of my thing. So I'm trying to take everything at a very scaling pace, a very slow pace. I don't need to jump into distribution or anything too soon. So I'm just trying to take one thing at a time so we don't overburden ourselves.
And again, COVID throws a monkey wrench in everything, but if you could project ahead 2, 3, 4 years, what do you see happening?
I would like to have another building, sort of like what Tonewood has done, where I have an offsite production for distribution and for sales to me, because you can have an offsite warehouse that you own and operate.
Right.
I want to keep the same tasting room. I think it's important that, our roots are here. So I'd like to keep my tasting room, in the town. If it turns out I can get a bigger building, 2 buildings over, 2 blocks over, that's one thing. But I think it's important to keep my roots here because this is the place that's, supported us so much. But I would like to have, distribution going, bigger tanks, just a bigger building, small tasting room in the warehouse and then tasting room here. So there's definitely plans for expansion. Like I said, we're, in a weird way, I don't try to look too far into the future because then I feel like I get caught up in it. So I just try to take the days that I have currently and then, think about what could we do in a month, what could we do in 2 months, and then, eventually when I have time, what could we do in a year or 2.
Jack, social media, all tremendous presence, correct?
Yeah, and I run all of it. So it's.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Boy, that's full time right there.
Our Facebook, our Instagram, our email. So I was serious when I said if you reach out on any platform, this is the guy you're talking to.
You go straight to the top.
Yeah, you go straight to the top. There's no bottom person. It's just me.
And I do want to give the website because people want to check that out for an update as to what you can find at Dr. Brewlittle's. And that the website is Dr., and that's abbreviated DR, Brewlittle's Beer, DR, also obviously all one word, drbrewlittlesbeer.com would be the website. That's what you want to check out, correct?
Yep.
Beautiful. Thank goodness I'm getting out, and I do want to visit you because again, you're brand new, and I've heard positive things. The buzz out there is that this is a good little brewery that's opened up.
That's what I try to do, man. I don't like putting bad beer in tap and Jack. We're doing pretty well here. I'm really happy with how things are turning out.
Well, welcome to Southern New Jersey. We're so happy to have you, and I look forward to meeting you in person, Jack.
You as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, and please give our love and respect to everyone aboard Dr. Brewlittle's.
I will do.
Okay, thanks again.
Yep, cheers.
All right, back with more What's on Tap.
The name 8 and Stand is an old train term. It means quick and safe travels.
We are a full production brewery with a tasting room on site and 20 taps with a huge amount of variety.
Check us out on our website. It's just www.8andsandbeer.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We're also in Philadelphia and surrounding areas. We're looking to increase that slowly and surely.